Dr. James. Hello. Very, very. Thank you. Dr. James?
I think you should start now.
All right. Okay, sir. I'm waiting for James and background music. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Good evening, Oga. Good evening, professors in the house. Good evening, senior colleagues, and every other person, all pragmatic point. We thank God for bringing us to February edition of our program. And in our flyers, we have seen it that today we have data engagement session. I don't know if Dr. Oji is around. Otherwise, we hand over to the speaker who is going to take us through, Dr. Adeoti, who is going to take us through this session today. And we all know that it's going to be it's going to be interactive in nature, and we are going to participate at a particular time. But she is going to be the speaker for today. Dr. Adeoti is somebody that we know. She has always been in our midst, and she has anchored several programs. And I know that today she's going to give us a treat to that particular session, data engagement session, which we expose us to how can we code data, how we can decode data, and how we can use them even for for analysis. So this data aggregation, we explore and we open and unearth all these things to us. So it's going to be a kind of a prototype that we can also use in our scholarship. Whenever we are faced with any form of data, how do we code it? How do we interpret it? How do we make features of this data so that the analysis will be will be of an easy ride for us. So I will call on Dr. Adeoti to take over the podium and give us to the meal of data engagement. Dr. Adeoti, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ajiboye. I say a very warm good evening to everyone here. Can you please let me know that you can hear me? You can just react, thumbs up, just some form of reaction, just so that I'm sure that everyone here can hear me. All right, thank you. Dr. Ajiboye, can you please confirm that you can hear me since I cannot see any reaction?
We can hear you, ma.
Thank you very much.
We can hear you. I've already done the thumbs up already.
Thank you, Professor Babatunde. I just heard your voice. Let me take this time to appreciate this group's team lead in person of Professor Akin Odebomi for this opportunity. And Professor Akin Odebomi is someone who always gives people coming after him the opportunity to not just express themselves, but also strive to be better. In the couple of years I have come to work closely with him, my life has not been the same, permit me to say that. So thank you so much, sir. I appreciate this opportunity. Professor Babatunde, I heard your voice now. Welcome, sir. Thank you for always being with us and giving us your support. All right. I welcome everybody here as well. Thank you for making our time to be here. There are just 11 of us, and I guess it's because of the time change. Usually we would have this on the last Saturday and by 8 p.m. So I think the time change is a bit unusual for people, but I'm sure that others will join us as we go on. So data engagement series. I'm sure that if any of us has gone through the note on the flyer that was sent, this series is one where we bring our data, for people who have data, for those who do not have data, we come here. And the data is presented to us. Some data might be one, it might be more, depending on the time that we have. And then we all get to engage the data as a group. And because it's something we're seeing for the first time, well, most of the time, it's spontaneous. And it's a way for us to train ourselves to approach data. So my job here today is really one of a facilitator. I am not the one who is going to be doing the engagement myself. I am just going to be, as it were, facilitating the session. However, before we do that, I'd just go through a couple of things as it relates to data, generally speaking, just touch on one or two things, and then we'd be presented with the data, and then we can engage it together as a group. So I'm going to be sharing my slide, and please let me know when you can see what I share. So please let me know that you can see what I am sharing.
You can see it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So essentially, what we are looking at here is essentially the nature of data in pragmatics. So what is the nature of data in pragmatics? Generally speaking, we can look at data from two broad classes, okay? Data can be generally naturally occurring. Naturally occurring data could be real life interactions that happen without any intervention from researchers. So these kinds of data are not data that are intended for analysis. Why? They occur naturally. And so they are authentic data, they are reliable data, because they are not premeditated, they are naturally occurring, and they occur naturally without the researcher meddling in their occurrence. They're not produced with the hope that they will be analyzed as text, but they nonetheless serve as a great source of data for pragmatics analysis. Of course, not just in pragmatics, but across various spheres of analysis. But since our concern here is pragmatics, we're looking at it from the lens of pragmatics. So what are the examples, some examples of such data? We have conversations, we have written text. So when people engage in day-to-day conversations, without thinking that someone is listening or that someone would use it someday, they are real. So these are rich sources of data for our analysis. A good example is doctor-patient conversations. Now, the patient comes to the doctor and they are just real. They are themselves because, they have a problem and they want it solved and things like that. So these are a great source of data. We have written texts as well. So speeches, for example, would fall into this category. We have printed or digital images. This would include cartoons and memes. And then we also have spoken texts, music, oral literary performances and things like that. And in the world of digital communication today, we have online communications, digital communications that occur in everyday contexts. These serve as a great source of data for us, and we can take from them for our analysis. Now, we also have what is regarded or referred to as elicited data. Now, elicited data is usually generated through controlled experiments or tasks that are designed by the researcher to study specific pragmatic phenomena. So the researcher goes with the intent of observing certain things and harvesting certain things. And so this might involve role plays, observations, surveys, and also structured interviews. Now, these might be, or they are more often than not as authentic as the naturally occurring data because of the way such data is collected. So when someone knows that what they are saying is being recorded or would be used for some purpose, they're usually careful. They want to say the right things, they want to sound right, etc. So this is another kind of data that we might have when we look at pragmatics analysis. And then we have the sources of data in pragmatics. Now, we suggested before that the data could be naturally occurring. We mentioned before that the data might be naturally occurring, or it might be the other one, which is elicited. So it can be drawn from, data can be drawn from simple day-to-day phatic conversations to complex phenomena such as war discourse and even health discourse. And then some of these are mentioned here. We have day-to-day interactions in all spheres, from family interactions at home, at the dining table, or during conversations at home, to the school settings, to hospitals, to police citizens interactions, to marketplace interactions, courtroom interactions, parliament sessions, classroom discourse, etc., etc. We could also have media discourse, so from religious sermons to music, to novels, to other published texts. We have digital interaction on social media. And, this is, the world is agog with this right now. Everywhere you turn, there's something on social media. If it's not on YouTube, it's on TikTok, it's on X, and all of these places. So these are great sources of data for us when we want to do pragmatic analysis. We have skits and other videos on e-channels like YouTube and TikTok. And then we have cartoons and memes from online newspapers and other media. And here I have said that we can mention other sources of data in the chat. So you can just leave that for us in the chat and we can look at it and engage it. So when we talk about data engagement in pragmatics, we need to consider tools, because if we're going to be engaging data, we engage data with certain tools. We do not approach data arbitrarily, but we need certain tools for our engagement of data. And so, because when we do research in pragmatics, or even in any area, generally speaking, the first things we look at would be generalized patterns in the data. So what things are generalized? What can we identify in the data? That's the starting point. And so to do that, we need certain tools. We need to be armed with certain tools. And these tools for us, when we do pragmatic analysis, are drawn from pragmatics and related fields. Now, these related fields could be social pragmatics, discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis, conversational analysis, critical pragmatics, and a whole lot of others. And it is the tools that help us to tease out these patterns that are either generalized or not, but that we're able to identify in the data and then explore the inherent meanings in these identified patterns. And so some of these tools we get from theories or approaches in pragmatics, and then have made a list of some of these possible approaches or theories that we generally use in pragmatics. There are a whole lot of others, but these are just some common ones that I have listed here. So we have May's pragmatic acts theory, we have Sperber and Wilson's relevance theory, we have Searle's indirectness, we could also have Searle's speech act, we have egocentrism in interaction, we have co-construction of meaning, we have Daisy's cooperative principles, contextual implications, impoliteness or politeness. We have contextual beliefs, like the popular one postulated and made available to us by Professor Odebumi. We have participation framework, and all of these are useful tools for us when we do pragmatics analysis. So when we're presented with our data for today, I'm sure some of these would come to mind and we'll be able to engage them in the analysis. So when we look at the analytical parameters for the engagement of any data we are confronted with, certain things are important for us to consider. We look at the data itself. What's the nature of the data? Is it interactional in nature? Is it a speech that was just delivered? In what kind of situation was the data delivered? What things influenced the making of the data, if you may? By so doing, we can tell that parliamentary discourse, for example, would differ greatly from hospital discourse. Hospital discourse would differ generally from family discourse. Family discourse would differ from marketplace discourse. And so the kind of data we draw from these areas would determine what patterns we would find. And to determine what patterns are there, remember we talked about tools. These tools we would need to use would be determined by the chosen theoretical approach. Now I'm sure we'll see that I put data as one and then the theoretical approach as two. Why? The data has to determine what theoretical approach we would use. Oftentimes we talk about our students, and for those of us who lecture, foreseeing their theory on the data. Now, this is because not all kinds of data would take all kinds of theories or approaches for analysis. And so this is very important. We need to first look at our data before we then look at the theoretical approaches. We look at the data and then we ask ourselves, what do we see? What do we want to make out of the data? What are our objectives as far as the data is concerned? And then that would lead us to choose a particular theoretical approach to help us make the best of the data that we have before us. All right, so these analytical parameters are the things we look at. They constitute the set of linguistic and logical tools which analysts develop, or with which analysts develop systematic accounts of discursive political interactions. Now, I have changed political to, a myriad of interactions or data sets. And so that's what we look at when we talk about analytical parameters. So without further ado, I am going to present to us the data for today's data engagement session. Now, like the word engagement suggests, it is an engagement, not just for me, it's for all of us. And if you look at this picture that I have put there, it is strategic. It's just so that we see that it is for all of us to engage it. You can see that all of them here are in some form of conversation. And that's what we're going to be doing with the data I am going to be sharing with us in a few minutes. So as we look at the data, I'll share it in a few moments, but as we look at it, let's check the data. What form of data is it? What's he talking about? And when we do that, we want to ask ourselves, what is our chosen theoretical approach based on what we see in the data? What would be our analytical tools for the engagement? What are the specifics about the data? What stands out to us in the data? What do we find amusing? What do we find marked? What do we find unusual, if you may, in the data? We also want to ask, what are the objectives? I asked that before. What are the foregrounded elements of pragmatics? What can we say about the context? And how does it affect the data? How does it affect the information or communication in that data? And then what is shared? For example, what is common grounded? What is not common grounded in the data? Now, this is our data, but because this is tiny, I am going to unshare what I'm sharing at the moment, and then I am going to share the data. It's in one page, and I'm going to be sharing that. So with your permission, I am going to stop sharing and then I'll unshare the data for today. I hope you can still hear me, please, everyone.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Audrey.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. One moment, please. All right, so this is the data for today's data engagement series. Okay, so I wish that we all could see it at a go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give us 2 minutes. I think we can, if our phones are available, we can take pictures of this and then I'll move it up. So I'll move up the page so that we can see the other part of the data so that we all can engage it. So I'll leave the first part open for a bit and then I'll move.
Could you just read out while we...
Oh, okay. Okay, then that's fine. That's perfect. All right. So please listen. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum addresses Trump. So you decided to build a wall. Well, dear Americans, even if you don't understand much about geography, since for you, America is your country and not a continent, it is important for you to know before the first brick is laid that there are 7 billion people beyond that wall. But since you don't really know the term people, we will call them consumers. There are 7 billion consumers ready to replace their iPhones with Samsung or Huawei devices in less than 42 hours. They can also replace Levi's with Zara or Massimo Dutti. In less than 6 months, we can easily stop buying Ford or Chevrolet cars and replace them with Toyota, Kia, Mazda, Honda, Hyundai, Volvo, Subaru, Renault, or BMW, which are technically better than the cars they produce. These 7 billion people can also stop subscribing to DirecTV. And we don't want to do that. But we can stop watching Hollywood movies and start watching more Latin American or European productions that have better quality, message, cinematic techniques, and content. Although it may sound incredible, we can skip Disney and go to the Xcaret Resort in Cancun, Mexico, Canada, or Europe. There are other great destinations in South America, East America, and Europe. And even if you don't believe it, even in Mexico, there are better hamburgers than McDonald's, and they have better nutritional content. Has anyone seen pyramids in the United States? In Egypt, Mexico, Peru, Guatemala, Sudan, and other countries, there are pyramids with incredible civilizations. Find out where to find the wonders of the ancient and modern world. None of them in the US. Shame on Trump. He would have bought them and sold them. We know that Adidas exists, not just Nike, and we can start wearing Mexican sneakers like Panam. We know more than you think. We know, for example, that if these 7 billion consumers don't buy their products, there will be unemployment and their economy will collapse within the racist wall to such an extent that they will beg us to tear down this ugly wall. We don't want to, but you want a wall, you get a wall. Sincerely yours. So this is the data for engagement this evening. It's the response of Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum in response to President Trump's wall. So in his first tenure, he had said he was going to build the wall, which he really did start building. And even during the campaigns, he kept talking about that wall. And so I'm going to stop here and allow us all engage the data. I'll give us a couple of minutes to just think it through, 1 or 2 minutes, and then we can start our engagement. Please let's indicate by a raise of hand when we want to make contributions, but I'm going to call one or two people to start us off in this session while I wait for our hands
my
to
hand
go
is
up.
up already.
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much, sir. Okay,
Yeah,
so you
because
have the floor, sir.
this is a very interesting text.
Yes, sir.
I'll just make a few points and allow others to come in.
Thank you, sir.
I'm attracted to this text. Well, luckily, this is not the first time I would see it, but it's the first time I would think seriously about it. I'm particularly attracted to the threat. One threat that looks initially innocent, but that gets bolder as the speaker moves on. And then it's very interesting that, well, we are talking about a superpower and a power that is not a superpower. And then the one that is not a superpower threatening, daring the superpower. Yeah. And so what I see in our first is the concept of the wall. Yes, the concept of the wall starts on a very, very plain note, common, ordinary. So you voted to build a wall. So you voted to build a wall. So that's actually building a wall, a physical wall. But at the end of it, it's more than just a physical wall. It's all about not just the wall, but also the line of demarcation, the economic disadvantages that will come to the US as a result of the building of the wall. And so wall or the wall takes a different dimension when we come to the end of it. And then one other interesting aspect of it is that rather than address Trump, the president is addressing Americans. And so in a way, he's saying that, well, your president may not be reasonable, but we guess you will be because you are going to outlive the president. And so you don't allow the president to mislead you. And that's why we have the concept of you don't understand much about geography. Because you see yourself not as a continent, but as a country. But you should also know that, well, we are talking about the geography, right? We are talking about the geography. We are talking about two geographies. America is a geography. The Mexico is a geography, right? But again, if you don't understand anything beyond that, that's really demeaning that, well, we thought you know, but we feel you don't know as much as we thought you do. We are now talking about something else. And so there is a recontextualization, all right? So there is a movement from the ordinary, from the normal population to the economic context. So it moves from geography, it moves from politics, and then it moves to economy. And so you are talking about consumers. So consumers are now the question. And so you are talking about America producing things and America actually needing people to patronize them. And so if you want to talk about people to patronize you, you cannot consume your own products. You need people to consume your product. So it's a way of saying, well, if you don't mind the 7 billion consumers, imagine that you lose these 7 billion consumers. And of course, if you have the 7 billion consumers, you know what it means. And so if you lose them, then you know what it means as well. So it goes on to give the threat until the end when he finally now addresses Trump, kind of insults Trump directly. So it's all the while been indirect that, okay, your president is taking this stupid decision, you allow him to go, but then you are talking about places that are far better than the US. And so you are talking about the relativity of the superpower. So let me stop here for others to contribute so that we have a more robust interaction. I like it so much. I can keep talking about it, but I think others should talk. Thank you.
Thank you very
Tomi.
much, Prof, for your insights. They are always invaluable. Thank you, sir. Yes, I am waiting for the hand to go up before I begin to invite people for the engagement. I am not sure, but I don't see any hands up yet. I hope I'm not missing that. Okay, so while I wait for the other hand to go, I'd like to invite Dr. Abiodun Jombadi to please give us his perspectives on the data. Dr. Jombadi, please. I hope you can hear me.
Thank you, Dr. Adeoti,
Thank
our
you.
indefatigable moderator, my distinguished mentors in the house. I can see Professor S.T. Oluwatunde is here. I can see, of course, our mentors, our great mentor, Professor Akinodebumi. Sir, good evening, sirs. I see Mama Faleke here. I see my good friend Ubamu. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Doc.
Yes, ma. I will come in. I would like to come in from the angle where Professor Odebumi started from. And I'm particularly interested in the way power is recalibrated here. Where the not so superpower is seemingly challenging the superpower and then hinging the challenge on economic threats. So I'm looking at it from the basics of CDA. If I'm permitted, maybe I'm not so much into pragmatics.
That's fine,
CDA.
Dr. Jombadi.
So I'm looking at it from the CDA angle, the fact that someone is resisting power here. The attempt by the not so power to resist, because I believe that this speech must have followed a particular speech, maybe from Trump, a threat from Trump, and then this must have been a reply from the Mexican president to Trump. So I wouldn't want to go outside the data, but I'll just focus on this, that I believe is an attempt to resist a dominance coming from the so much superpower, and an attempt to establish through deictic construction, looking at deictic effect in the data really. The example of we can easily stop buying Ford or Chevrolet, and that may, and we don't, sorry, I can't see the whole of the data. Somehow, some parts are cut off. So the use of personal digs is there. Actually caught my attention. The use of personal digs is there. We, and that we for me isn't just referring to Mexican people. Okay, I believe it refers to the entire group of continents that Trump might have seen as subservient to America. So I see this as an attempt to really lower or clip a wing that seems to be that seems to be featuring itself as something larger than life, to state the fact that nobody is indispensable, however powerful you are. So I see two groups here, the seeming powerful group and then the seeming inferior group challenging the powerful group. So it's an attempt to resist power, which I believe is the hub of CDA being demonstrated here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abiodun Jombadi. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Yes, I'm still waiting for the hands. And since there is none up just yet, I'd like to ask Dr. Ruth Oji to please give us our perspectives on this data. Thank you. Dr. Oji?
Okay, I was holding back from raising my hand because I'm still in transit. and the environment is a bit noisy. Maybe if you could
Okay.
get
If it's
back
not
here.
convenient, okay, then we'll just we'll have you on
Hello.
standby. Dr. Akinola, is that you?
Yes.
Okay, please, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you. I would like to say thank you for organizing this program first. My contribution is going to be a little shocking because when I read the text, my first reaction was that, with the relationship between the US and then the Mexican people, that this is too good to be true, you know. So I did a little check and I found that this is a parody. So we need to engage with this text as a parody, you know. It's a kind of a fabricated statement that has been circulated online, and it's falsely attributed to the Mexican president. She didn't actually write this, but that does not reduce the fact that we can engage in with it, you know, from the pragmatic point of view, from CDA. So if we want to look at it from that angle, we agree it's a parody, but it doesn't take away the fact that it's a good text, you know. So I would say that it's kind of a reversal of a hegemonic narrative where the text typically challenging the Western centric discourse by trying to undermine the US exceptionalism, you know, that we have it all. So, and instead, the text also positions Mexico and the rest of the world as culturally self-sufficient. The question about pyramid, cultural heritage, and all that. These are stuff that reframe historical narrative, and then shift focus from the Western ideology, the Western arrogance, the Western country arrogance with the non-Western civilization. It's just like saying that, come on, you are not the only one. Who are you? Who are you to think we can't do without you? Take whatever you want to take, and then we'll still survive. So there are a lot of ways we can engage. For instance, I also think of irony as satirical critique. If we also have to look at the mention of replacing Ford with Toyota, Disney with Cancun Resort, and all that, so we'll see that mimic of economic threat that is often issued by US leader is there, but the Mexican president now, imaginary Mexican president now, is saying that, well, you are not just alone. There is this interdependence of global economies. Nobody can stand it all. So there are a lot of things that we can look at. And if we think of impoliteness theory and maybe political parody too, and we want to maybe bring in Jonathan Kupepe's impoliteness theory, we can look at how parody and confrontational language are deployed here. For example, we can see the mock politeness where it says, "Dear Americans," when you look at that phrase, you see that it appears from the beginning, and it's a kind of trying to pretend to be civil while you are trying to mock the entire race, mocking the entire ignorance, to say that they're ignorant Americans, particularly when you when you consider the mention of geography, there. You should also look at sarcasm and face-threatening acts. You see the expression "shame on Trump." That was the reason why I actually went to check. How can a president from Mexico say this? And then it will not be on the news, and then you see that, well, there is a kind of sarcasm and then face threatening. I wish that the president actually said it, so because it would be a direct attack on Trump's leadership and then the ethnocentrism of the American government as it presently is. Another thing I have jotted down here is the kind of threat and coercion, like when the writer says that 7 billion consumer can replace American goods, this is a counter-hegemonic discourse, where you want to mimic Trump's protectionist, when you want to mimic the way Trump usually seem to protect himself and say, oh, American industry are not vulnerable. Whereas if you actually do what you want to do, you see how vulnerable you actually are. So there are a lot of things to say, but I think let's engage with the text from the point of parody than the actual statement, so that will give us a proper context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akinola. Yes, Dr. Orji's hand is now up, but I'd like to call Dr. Simeon Ajiboye so his hand does not begin to ache. The hand has been up for so long. So yes, Dr. Simeon.
Yeah, thank you for text. I would just like to line of Dr. Akinola. When I saw the text, that jumped into my heart. Who purpose is politeness, because both simplicity and
There's an echoing.
it shouldn't be from my end.
Using
That's
two
now.
devices.
Please go on.
I'm not using two. I'm only using one device. It shouldn't be from my own end. Is it okay now?
Yes, it is. It's fine now. Please go on.
All right. So I said, it's one thing that is, let me say, very obvious in the text to me as you were reading earlier on is actually the issue of impoliteness. And I went through again, I see the Cruz Pepper's impoliteness strategies, super strategies being used in this particular place, in this particular text, as raised by Dr. Akinola, right from the very first paragraph that we see there. You could see the kind of impoliteness being strategies being used in that particular place. And it's actually something like a subtle, either subtle, covertly or overtly face-threatening attack, face-threatening acts on not just on Trump, but on the Americans as a whole. And that's one I could see it run from that particular place. Now looking at it that where they're American, if you don't understand much about geography, saying that to the country of America as a whole that is believed to be intelligent, known to be the orb of knowledge, saying that if they don't know, that's actually is an impoliteness. It's a face-threatening act as I could read it. And also I saw it running down through that particular one. So I will actually approach it first and foremost from the angle of impoliteness, look at the impoliteness strategies used and how it actually how those super strategies are used to exhume the underlying meaning of the text. That being said, just like a follow-up to what Dr. Akinola said, another thing I have found very interesting in this particular place is the politics of person reference. How the person reference, the pronoun were used to actually create a kind of membership categorization in this particular text. And I looked through all of them, I discovered that they are trying to create a kind of pitching America as a whole against the world. So it's actually like we versus them in this particular place, and which also lead to a kind of identity construction through this politics of personal reference as we have it in this particular text. And we can see it will, they, you, he, running through that particular thing, I could see that they have significant pragmatic import, as we see in that place, to make a kind of membership categorization, pitching America against the whole world. And that is one way. Another, we'll have to look at it, that pitching American economy against the whole world economy, which we know that there is going to be a kind of interdependency, which they are trying to make Americans to realize that, look, you cannot stand on your own. But you, if you know you're going to go this way, like what Oga earlier said, it's actually a threat in the sense of it. But pitching the whole America that you are fighting the whole world. You are not just fighting the Mexicans or the Mexican government, but you are actually fighting the whole war. And that one will actually make us to realize what's actually going on in the political landscape, in the international political landscape, when President Trump actually gave the, even before when he won the election and what he said. So bringing the encyclopedic reality of what is happening in the international political space, we can actually look at this in this particular sense. Those references are strategically used. Those personal references are strategically used to make a kind of membership categorization, and at the same time, the line wants to create a kind of identity, American identity against the world identity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Simeon Achiboye. He has also not only gone the CDA route, he's also blended it with certain pragmatic approaches. Yes, so thank you very much. Dr. Orji, you have the floor if you are in a suitable location now.
Well, I guess you just have to manage me with the noise around because I couldn't make it home in time. So I'm going to be looking at this text. I hope you can hear me very well, though.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm going to be looking at this text from, say, a pragmatic and maybe some aspects of CDA as well. And I'm going to focus on just the first part of it. So what I see here, it's not too different from what my colleagues have mentioned earlier, but maybe I'll be looking at it from different perspectives. So for example, this response would be showing something about power dynamics and something about strategic counter positioning. That's what I see here. Maybe I can directly say that the speaker here, that is this Mexican president, is employing Van Dyke's ideological square. Well, the strategy here is, us versus them. So he's trying to emphasize their negatives, that is American ignorance, and then he's highlighting our own positive, that is Mexican positives in terms of global consumer power. That's one thing I see playing out here in terms of power dynamics and counter positioning. Then I also see the thing of presupposition and implicature. So for example, when he says, let me pick from the first paragraph there, even if you don't understand much about geography, here there is this presupposition that there is American ignorance, all right? Again, he says, let me pick again, since for you, America is your country and not a continent, here there's also a presupposition of ethnocentrism, I see. And one last one I see there, since you don't really know the term people, I think that presupposes dehumanization. And if I look at how Fair Club considers issues like this, I would say that they can be called naturalized ideologies because these positions are contestable, but here they have been presented as facts. And that's the kind of thing I think James was alluding to when he said, well, we shouldn't just take these things as real. So for the speaker to have presented contestable stuff as facts, he's trying to get these ideologies naturalized so people begin to believe that this is really how things are. All right. So that's something there. And Professor Debmir earlier on spoke about the thing of threat. Yeah, but I also see that there is some kind of mitigation of the threats through some kind of conditional construction. Yeah, so for example, I hope I can see that clearly. Yes, these 7 billion people, no, these 7, please can you just scroll up a bit more? No, I think you've gone too far. Just, okay, yeah. It says there are 7 billion consumers ready to replace, all right? So by using such expressions, to my mind, the speaker is trying to make a threat while he's still trying to maintain diplomatic, plausible deniability. So that would be like what Brown and Levinson called off-record face-threatening act. So even though he's making a threat, he's trying to still use some kind of terminologies or expressions to make it look like, well, I'm not saying it directly. These are just some of the things I picked. I feel like others might want to add a thing or two to it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roji. You have picked a whole lot. Thank you for your ideas and perspectives on this. Yes, let's keep them coming. Let's keep them coming.
Can I talk now?
Who is that, please? Sorry, I can't see
My
your
name is
hand.
Our prof for Babatunde.
My apologies, sir. Please go ahead. You have the floor, sir. And it will interest us to know that Prof supplied us with this data. We made a call for data. Not a lot of people responded. So thumbs up to Professor Babatunde for this. So thank you, Prof. You have the floor, sir.
Well, the first thing I want to mention is that the Mexican president who gave us this speech has a good is addressing. He knows that Trump is witty and intelligent and can be completely down to earth when he's tongue lashing his opponent or adversary. So that understanding can be seen at the background of the presentation. So it's as if I know the person I'm addressing and I know how it can get back at me. Let me also use strategies that will make it very difficult for him to be able to directly confront the issues I'm raising here. So it's as if the intention is to make Trump to be dumbfounded, not to be able to say anything, because we realize that when there is such a political speech in the air, the person being addressed is expected to also more or less say something as a face-saving device to defend him or herself. I have the tendency to look at this data mainly from the CDA point of view, but I will try to avoid using terminologies from anywhere as much as possible, but just to address the issues so that my bias will not be easily perceptible. Others have, so looking at it from this background, okay, why has this president presented these because of the knowledge he also can do with language. And Trump is not somebody who can be indirect. He all goes head on and give it to whoever he wants to give it to without any restraints. So the attempt is to also hit back at him in such a way that it will be difficult for him to give a response. Having said that, so how did she now present the thing? Others have spoken, especially our guy in the US who is in the backyard of Trump. I hope. So yes, there is a sarcasm and a lot of ridicule. So initially it was covert, then towards the end it became overt. Now, what is the standpoint? What is the stance for that ridicule? The standing of the speaker is, come, you are behaving like a kid. Let me give you information. Let me educate you. You don't seem to be fully aware of the implications of your action. So as a more knowledgeable person, the way we relate, elders relate with children, that's the kind of position these presidents appear to be giving. So I have superior knowledge. You are uninformed. You are being reckless in this action, just the way a child who does not have a comprehensive understanding of the action will be. So let me call your attention to your recklessness. You know, that appears to be the kind of thing he is doing. So that is on one hand. On the other hand, he is also presenting a political campaign. He is speaking like the voice of the world, you know, the world that would want to be, that will receive the brunt of whatever political action Trump appears to be taking. So in that way, he's also trying to garner support from others. So presenting ourselves as the voice of these people is as if others will be so on. Now, talking about the wall, let me go a step further, that there's no way by which we can have a without wall image, wall metaphor at the very, very background of the discussion. So, and for me, the wall is presents Trump as being myopic. You know, when you build a wall, you cannot see. The wall blocks your perception. So they're saying the wall you intend to build, which you have already built in your mind, is already blocking your perception. You cannot see things clearly again. So let me help you to let me broaden your perception so that you will see how injurious and myopic your action will be, even to yourself. Just the way a child will be playing with fire and the elders will be the one to say, you don't know fire, you know, that kind of thing. So that's the stance of these leaders. So it's a political campaign, and it is working like a double-edged sarcasm, because she's also, and that's what happens. Somebody who is playing with with mud, we also, some part of it, we also splash on that person. Despite the fact that others will also be besmeared by the mud. So she has developed a speech using a lot of pseudo logic and elevating opinion to the status of facts, because some of those things he appears to be saying, they are just personal opinion. It's not as if he has well, we don't have that evidence that he has actually carried out a survey to know that the people will prefer some of the other options he's trying to present. So in a sense, if we look at it very critically, we also see ourselves being ridiculed just in that presentation, because she's also elevating opinion to the status of facts using a lot of emotions and pseudo logic to curry, to attract the attention of people and everybody she sees to be speaking for. So at the end of the day, it's an attempt to hit back at the president, whom she knows is also very good at giving it to his opponents, and then making an attempt to ensure that whatever she was going to offer would be a kind of technical knockout that will not make the addressee to give any kind of response. Let me also stop here so that you won't think I'm the one dissecting the data. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the professorial intervention and engagement. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Yes, do we still have ideas, opinions, perspectives on this before we begin to tie it up. We still have some time, so I'd like to ask others to please weigh in on the discussion. Dr. Falike, it's good to have you here, Ma. If you'd like to say a few things, we'd be glad to hear your opinion and ideas on the data map. Okay, I'm not sure she's still there. Okay, Ma.
I'm still here, please.
Okay,
I'm
Ma.
still
Okay, Ma.
here.
All right, Ma.
I'm enjoying every bit of it.
Thank you.
And
I'm
I think
glad
I
to
should
hear that.
keep enjoying it, yes.
Okay,
Well
that's fine,
done.
Ma.
Yeah. I,
All right, Dr.
I
Falike.
joined almost in the midst of the discussion, so I
Okay,
didn't
all
start
right.
from the beginning. Yeah,
All
thank you
right,
very
that's
much.
fine, ma'am. That's fine.
Well
Thank you.
done.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I saw Dr. Dubamo. I'm trying to look for him here, and then I can't find him. I don't know if he's still here. Okay, if Dr. Dubamo is still here, please let's know so you can indicate and you can have the floor. While we wait, can we have other people give us their thoughts? Dr. Peter Ope, it's good to have you here.
Yeah, good evening, Doc. Good
Thank
evening,
you.
mentors. I am sorry, Ma. I'm not sure I'll be able to make any input today.
That's okay. It's fine.
Maybe another time. Yeah. Thank you
It's
very
fine.
much.
Thank you.
for
Thank you very
the
much.
conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
President Ebumi, thank you, sir. You have the floor, sir.
Well, I started it off with the hope that we will have a very robust discussion, and it actually happened as I expected. Well, you don't expect any less when you have this quality of participants. Well, I think one issue that has to be taken seriously was the one raised by James regarding the nature of the text we are looking at. And so since it wasn't a real speech, it has to be engaged as a fiction. That's precisely what I think. And it looks like, I don't know, Oga could tell us this. Oga, Professor Babatunde could tell us this. I know there was this sarcasm, there is this standard sarcasm, was it written by Jonathan Swift or someone, like it was exactly like this. So it was when James said that I tried to look at the connection between that speech or that text and this text. And so it's actually good to go into intentionality. It is not just about the text, but about the meta text. For example, what could possibly have informed this? And of course, it's a question of politics. The fact that at the point, of course, as you said earlier on, it was Trump who started talking about the idea of the war. But when Trump came back again, he was talking about something else. He was talking about sanctions to Canada and sanctions to Mexico. Of course, James could tell us more about this. But I listened to the Canadian president talk about this and address this. And he was frontal about it. Okay, if you sanction us, we will also sanction you. That's not about fiction, it's about the reality. And so it was after he did that there was negotiation. So in a way, this could be constructed for the purpose of negotiation, but to what end? Particularly when it couldn't be confirmed to have come from the president. So we have more than just one way to look at this. Well, it's a political text, but also an agenda text as well. So we may want to take a look at what kind of genre we are looking at and the intentionality. And so the question of intentionality would come in not only from the point of view of the characters, the direct characters, but also the authorship. And so we may have to take it alongside the way we take fictive texts as we have in Jacob May's literary pragmatics, where we talk about the voice smash, the voice crash, and then the voice trash. You know, these are some of the issues that we may look at. I wasn't looking at all this before because I didn't know that this wasn't real. For me, it was too good, really. But I thought because there was a bad relationship between the US and Mexico, that could possibly have happened, but it actually sounded too brash, you know. How would someone say shame on Trump? You know, but then I believed it. Honestly, I believed it until James said it. So we may want to take more look at or a closer look at some of these other issues, but not today anyway. So you may want to go to the next step or the next stage where we look at the possible objectives, the theories, and precisely how do we engage this analytically? How do we analyze this practically speaking? So thank you. That's all I want to add.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much, sir. I'll stop sharing now, and then I'll go back to my original slides that I shared so that we can take up some of these questions that we had asked originally in terms of how we approach this data. You know, so 1 minute, please. Sorry. So I'm just going to share that now. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty sharing. I don't know why. All right, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble sharing my slides, which I shared originally without any issues. I don't know why. So we'll just ask ourselves certain questions. I'll prompt us and then we can take them up. So we want to ask, what do we think could be the objectives of this data? Now, we know that it has been confirmed to us that it's a parody. However, I want to believe that it is a parody that is representative of what people in certain spheres think or believe. So we want to look at this as the voice, if you may, just as Professor Odebumi just mentioned, the voice of certain people in Mexico, in some parts of Europe, and other countries around America. This is a representation of their state of mind, of what they are going through, considering Trump's wall, the wall he talks about with so much enthusiasm. So we look at it like that this text is representative of something. Okay, so what do we think the objectives of this particular data is? What do we think the writer, assuming of course that it was written by the person it's ascribed to, or by anybody who chose to ascribe these words to the president of Mexico? What is the intention? And then as we analyze it, what are the objectives that we have in mind as we engage the text in the analysis? So just like we look at objectives when we do our data analysis, what possible objectives can we project here? Yes, please. That's what we are looking at next before we go on. So what are the possible objectives?
Okay, are you talking about objectives in terms of the research objectives?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What do we want to look at?
So, in other words, could we think about what we could make of it? For example, what kind of analysis could we be doing with this?
Yes, sir.
I think we start from that point. What kind of analysis could we possibly do with this? And then we now see that the text as the data, as one of a datum that we are using for that research. Then we can talk about the objectives. You can invite people to contribute.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir. So what are we doing with this? Let me
just add to what Professor Odebumi just said.
Thank you, Prof.
Just like he has said, if we do not determine what kind of analysis, it will be difficult to raise objectives. Because if it's literature-driven analysis, which you also mentioned about using tools, then you need to, the theoretical concept will help you to also determine or supply the phrasing of the objectives. Because as you raise objectives, there must be a one-to-one relationship between the tools you want to use for analysis and those objectives. So that's why we need to determine what kind of thing do we want to do with this. And that's why we can have several, depending on your standpoints. Where are you looking at this data from? So wherever we suggest objectives, we also tell us, okay, this is where I'm looking at it from. Then any objectives suggested will then be taken in the context of that standpoint. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. So do we have ideas on that? Or can I suggest that we consider this? Of course, this is open to other people's contributions. Can we consider this based on a lot of things that have been said about the data from the contextual beliefs perspective? Can we consider it from politeness, the perspective of politeness, which would of course then include face-threatening and saving acts, and also maybe look at it from the perspective of maybe sarcasm. So these are ideas, so we can build on that. So can we get ideas based on this? Thank you. Yes, Dr. Orji.
And I think we can also do a kind of metaphor analysis here where we analyze the wall as conceptual metaphor. I think Professor Debumi earlier on alluded to that.
Yeah.
We might also look at container metaphors, that's looking at inside and outside, or even economic metaphors that are used as political tools. That perspective might also help.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Audrey. So that's one. We're considering it from the perspective of metaphor. I suggested contextual beliefs and politeness. Do we have contrary views or?
Okay, could there be something a bit more encompassing?
Okay,
Could
Prof.
there be, something that would subsume all of this? Something that will subsume all of this. I can't think of anything readily, but I think that would be better so that
Yes, sir.
it's better for generalization, so that you are not talking about metaphors separately from sarcasms and so forth. But then it's possible to look at them differently in their own right. But sometimes you see that they are all connectable under one umbrella. Yeah.
Yes,
so I
Can
guess
we then use CDA? Power
yes,
relation and all that.
Professor.
Power relation and all that will be all encompassing, and then all of these things will then be strategies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Metaphor will be strategy, politeness will be strategies, and all of that. So if we do
Okay,
a
sir.
CDA and then try to look at all these strands as ways of identifying and establishing the power relations, maybe just give me a suggestion.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that suggestion. Yes, Dr. Jambadi.
I wouldn't know if critical pragmatics will better suit what Professor Debumi suggested.
Okay.
And
no, but critical pragmatics is not fully developed. That's the problem.
Yes.
Still we are still battling with it because of the border it shares with critical discourse
analysis. Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
so
sir.
even in Van Dyke's latest book, 2024, where he's talking about social movement and emancipation, he still could not really bring it out. So I think CDA will be good. But rather than talk about CDA, just as Oga said, we can go the way of
Hello, can we still hear Prof? I have lost audio on him.
Um,
I can't hear him.
Oh no. I hope he gets back here quickly. He was saying something very important and then it went off. Okay, so while we wait for Prof. Yes, Dr. Audrey.
okay, I was just thinking if there's something like social pragmatic critical discourse analysis, because that kind of perspective would then incorporate, different perspectives, which will connect discourse, power, and then social action. So like Professor Batunde said, we'll be looking at how linguistic choices connect to power relations, then anything of politeness and all. Maybe it will just be one broad framework, but we find a way to link them all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Orji. I think social pragmatics works, considering, of course, that it's an approach that is open to taking on several theoretical issues. So that might be a way to go. However, I really want to hear what Professor Debumi was going to suggest. I don't know. I hope he gets back here quickly. So let's say we decide on social pragmatics, for example, and then we would simply use metaphors, the contextual beliefs that are there, politeness. Prof is back.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Professor Debumi. We lost you for a bit.
Yeah, complete.
Yes, sir.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
I
So
was only
please continue, sir.
I was trying to harp more on what Oga said.
Okay, sir.
Now we want to go the way of CDA, rather than say we go the way of CDA so that we can bring in our own pragmatics. We can talk about, power relational construction. Yeah. And then we can further refine that. And then we can bring in all of this. For example, in trying to construct power, in this case, it is political and economic power. So it's not just economic, it's also political. It's initially political. But, because of the enormity of that political power difference, the speaker decides to go the way of the economic, which will disadvantage the powerful Superman. And so, in a way, it's actually construction of power. And so, in a way, that is the target of a negotiation. So we are talking about power relational dynamics and how this gets constructed in the speeches. And so if we go this way, it's possible to come up with relevant objectives of the study. And of course, there are enough examples of this side to the text that we are just mentioning. So I agree with Oga on that. So we can go that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof. While you were away, Dr. Oji mentioned social pragmatics, and then I was just saying that that's another good way of approaching this. So I just thought to
well, do you know the problem with social pragmatics is that it's just the opposite of pragma linguistics.
Yes, sir.
And social pragmatics is everything that we do
Yes, sir.
that has to do with the contextual use of language rather than the strictly linguistic conceptualization of it. And so it might be too broad to be considered. So, but we can use insight from it. Insight from social pragmatics. I agree with Ruth. I can use insight from it to do the analysis.
All right, sir.
I think we should just go the way Oga suggested.
All
but
right,
we don't need to complete that today. Everybody could go back to think about the objectives, but we can go to the next step to talk about the ways to do analysis. Because there are PG students here. I know of someone who is particularly here because of our analysis. I will not mention the name. She's here because of our analysis, and she wants to know how analysis is done, discourse analysis or pragmatics. So there are people like that who want to know. So we may want to talk about that, and then
All
we
right,
can
sir.
close in a few minutes so that we will not be discouraged from coming to next.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, Prof. Okay, so approaching this kind of datum in terms of analysis, what do we do? What do we look out for? So because this is not a big data set, we might not be talking about categorizing the data and all of that. Can we please mute our mics? Thank you very much, Dr. Akintela. All right. I'd like to ask Dr. Simeon Ajiboye to please just say one or two things about approaching this kind of datum in terms of analysis. How do we do data analysis with this kind of datum? And then just take 1 or 2 minutes to do that for us so that we can close this in time.
All right. I think in my own way, so far we are still actually looking at it. The objective actually will lead us to the kind of the analysis we want to do as we are thinking about it. But preliminarily, I will talk about top-down approach, the analytical tools of top-down. And this one we actually have to do with categorizing as well. Now, even as we have this data, we can still categorize. We can categorize issues that we have in that particular place as we break it down. We've talked about several things that this particular data we encapsulate in the sense that we have several things to talk about. We have discussed the issue of metaphor. We have discussed the issue of politeness and impoliteness. We have talked about the power dynamics. We have talked about the power relations. Talked about the issue of trust, construction of trust in this particular data set. So all these can actually go together. And in order for us to harmonize these things together, obviously we are going to me, as I'm thinking, we have to go by the way of top-down approach, which we'll be doing with categorizing all these issues. And we are now going to have the subcategories of it. Then we now characterize them. Then we go also by exemplifying them. So I don't think in my own way that there is no data we cannot categorize based on the issues raised or based on the features realized or coded in the data. So once we have done that, which we have been able to do now, the first thing we have done when we are talking is to code our data. And this particular thing we have realized, we can now categorize them based on their relevant features. And that's actually the first stage we have to do. What we have identified, what we have coded in our data set, we can now put them into their relevant features. So which happen to be the very first step that has to do with categorization. So when we have categorized, then we now begin to look at, we can now characterize. That by characterization, we now look at the subsets of what we have categorized as relevant to what we have. Then, before we now go to the descriptive nature of it, which is actually talking about exemplifying them. Now, 3 layers or 4 layers, as I have seen here. The relevant features categorization, then we now have the subcategorization of it, of what we have. Then we now go to the next layer where we are going to now to characterize what we have. By characterization, then we begin, after characterization, we now exemplify. Then go into the data set, take out the micro element that we really want to use to substantiate those earlier categorized items or earlier categorized features, then we now begin to exemplify them by the exact. So that's actually a kind of the paranomic view of how analysis can go in this kind of data. If actually I want to approach the data set, that's how I will go. I will go with it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ajiboye. Now, something that stood out for me from what he just said. Yes, Prof. You have the floor in a minute, sir. I just want to give my thoughts.
Please go ahead, and then
all right, sir.
I thought
Thank you, sir.
is talking.
Yes, sir. So something that stood out for me is the fact that he said, regardless of what the datum is, or whether it's a big data set or just one datum like we have here, you can always do a categorization. So I had said what I said, considering the data from the perspective of when we have big data sets and we have to do our categorization in terms of grouping under, for example, maybe subsets, categories in terms of the major issues there. But then he drew my attention to the fact that even this datum we can easily categorize the issues that we have. So even if we don't have groups in this datum, we have issues. So it means that we can actually do our categorization based on the issues identified. So we might not be talking about, but we can do our categorizations in terms of issues, And that's a very important lesson to take away from this session. You have the floor, Prof. Sir.
Just to add to what Simon has said and what you have also said, well, it's possible to always categorize. And let's take a very simple look at what's possible. We are talking about power relations. There should be a context for it. And when we're talking about context, we can categorize, we can identify types of context. For example, one basic context here is diplomatic. The diplomatic context is very important here. Well, if you want to separate the diplomatic from the economic and then from the political, then you could go on to look at 3 basic types of context. And under that alone, or under the concept of the context alone, you can further have different subtypes of context and how they get realized and constructed. Then we can go into the types of power relations. What kinds of power relations do we have? When we are talking about types of power relations, we're already categorizing. All of this will constitute the objectives. But again, we will have to look at the outcome, precisely what is the agenda for the research. What do we want to achieve at the end of the day? But we should also note that when we do research, we can't just take the research that we are doing in the middle as we are doing it now. We are taking it in the middle because of this kind of practice, just as Oga said. In a normal research activity, you establish the gap. And so we may want to make this one datum, look for more data sets, and then situate this in a genre, and then do appropriate literature review that will reveal the gap that's available, and then we move on from there. But we believe this has been helpful enough for anyone who's interested in continuing with this discussion. So that's all I want to add.
Thank you very much, Professor Odebumi. All right. I was going to attempt to tie this all up because I think that with Professor Odebumi's permission, we can draw the curtain here, except we can continue. But I think that at this point, we have spoken about categorization and the approach to data analysis. And I think that Professor Odebumi and Dr. Ajiboye's perspectives are, a good way to tip us in the right direction to go in terms of engaging and analyzing datum or data of this sort. I'll quickly ask for questions. I'm aware we have PG students here. I can see Habibullah Yunusa. I can see Ayo Odebumi. Welcome to everyone, and to every other person who is here. Tolu Falade is here. These are PG students. We are happy to see you. I'm not sure if Taswi is a PG student or not, but we are excited to have you here. This is not just for us, it is for you as well. So thank you for being here. So if we have questions about the discussions that we have had tonight, or there are gray areas you'd like us to quickly say 1 or 2 things about before we close, now is the time to let us hear your questions or your contributions as well, and then we can wrap this up. I hope I'm in order, Prof.
Yes. Yes, now to me.
Make a comment. Make a comment.
Yes, I know that.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Please let's know your name. I can't see who's talking. I'm sorry.
It's still the
Please
same
go
ST
ahead.
Babatunde.
Prof, I'm sorry, but why is your voice sounding so different this evening, sir? Please go ahead and make your comments, sir.
Because I'm waiting for the banquet promised by Auntie Ruth. So I'm famished. That's why I'm talking like that. So Auntie
All
Ruth will
right,
take
sir.
over. after
Please
the
go ahead
curtain.
and make your comments, Prof.
Yeah, I let the discussion continue somehow. If there are some postgraduate students here who, on the basis of this interaction, are now seeing some green light with respect to what they are doing, and they want to ask questions specifically on their own data sets, I want to appeal that we say something in that regard so that they can get in touch with the lead, the anchor person in this discussion today, or any other person. So I just want to say that they may not be readily available with their issues, but some things might be forming in their heads, so that they'll be allowed to allow the discussion to continue, at least on interpersonal relationship, after drawing the curtain for this evening discussion. That's just what I want, the appeal I want to make.
All right, Prof.
Okay, sir. Tomi, can I add something?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Well, I think the big Oga who has spoken is the only one who could do this, and we know him for that. We know Oga has been doing that for several years, and nobody can beat that. So I want to suggest that we have a small group, which will be headed by Oga, for whoever wants to follow up on this engagement. And subsequently, when it comes to PG students and their questions, I think we can get a small group. And then whoever is here who wants to join, there will be a call on the PragmaticPoint platform for them to join that group. And then they cannot ask their questions directly. Oga will do that perfectly. And I know some of them really need that help. So they need that help. And it's a good idea that Oga is raising here. So thank you very much for that leadership.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe
I
to me, for
absolutely
God's
agree,
sake.
sir. Okay, we have Emma Binu, Prof, sir. All right, I have one hand up, and I'll just quickly ask him to ask his questions or make his comments. That would be the last we'll take, and then I'll turn the session back to Dr. Simeon Ajiboye. So Abibullah Yunusa, please ask your question and make your comments quickly, please. Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, esteemed scholars on the forum. I joined the session very late, and I see that it is being recorded. I want to ask if it is possible to have access to the recording later. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you for the question. Professor Debomi, sir. Hello, Professor. Okay, so I'm not.
Before Prof will come, I think the recording will be available on the website.
On the website. Okay,
Dr.
I wanted to confirm that.
Here. I think Dr. Akiola.
Yes, he's doing the recording actually.
Is Dr. Leon
It will be available on the website.
Yes, he is.
Maybe some minutes after the meeting.
All
right. I did not stream it live to the YouTube.
Yeah,
but we will upload it then.
We have the recording. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. James Akinola, for always coming through for us when it comes to IT issues. We appreciate you. Okay, so thank you so much again, everyone, for making it a date this evening. That's it from me. It's been an enlightening session for me personally. My note here is I have pages of stuff that I have jotted down. So thank you, and we'll see you again the next time we meet. Dr. Ajiboye, it's over to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Adeoti. It's actually a very enlightening, illuminating session that we have this evening, and educating indeed. We thank God for today, and we thank God for the way the program is going, had gone, and is still going. I think just a follow-up to what the issue of recording. Perhaps we don't know our URL. I think Dr. Akinola will also do well to post the website and how they could navigate it, perhaps on the platform, for those who are not aware of how to navigate through. It will be posted. Without saying any other thing, I think I will call on Oga if there is anything else for us for today before we draw the curtain.
Well, nothing else. I only want to appreciate Professor Babatunde for making time to be here. We know Oga is very busy, but we are very happy to have him with us. We have others joining from all over the place, all over the world. James is joined from the US. James is our ICT officer, and it's been wonderful. We have Dr. Faliki joining from Ghana. We had colleagues joining from Kenya. Initially I saw Helga. I think she left, but she will be happy to have the recording. People joined from Cameroon, people joined from Ghana, people joined from all over. People joined from Finland, from Finland, from all over the place. And Simeon joined from Iceland, I think, from Iceland, from Germany. So thank you all very much for thank you all very much for coming. Well, it's going to be a good time next month. I guess James would be more involved next month than now. And I think all of us, at least 2, 3, 4 of us know what we are talking about. James, we are warming up to hear from you and your team in March. So on this note, I think we can bring the meeting to a close. Let's have the group for the mentors established, the platform to be headed by Oga Professor Babatunde. Then we trust that the PG students will have a swell time there. I'm very, very sure of that. Nobody can do that better than Professor Shola Babatunde. So on this note, I say thank you to everyone. We meet again in March by the grace of God.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir.
Bye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Okay.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much, sir.
you. Thank you.
Well done, Dr. Adeoti.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Job Buddy.
Thank you, all of you. You are
Thank
doing well.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Deboni, Dr. Adeoti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sasu. Dr. James Akinola, thank you for always.
Thank you, everyone.
James is an oracle. James is an oracle.
We appreciate
Nobody
you for
can do without him. So
thank you.
Landlord,
Thank you. I
so
did
much
too. It was a learning curve
Maybe
for me
thank you
this
so much,
evening.
Dr. Adeoti. This is great. God
Thank
bless
you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to Professor Debumi for the opportunity. We appreciate you, sir.